Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome into Tom Curran's Patriots Talk Podcast. Riding alongside my buddy Phil Perry, who is back from the Combine. Phil, the chaos is going to start this weekend for the second time in 4 years. The Patriots have more cap space than anybody else. You could say they are tight-fisted, but they're also bad at picking players. And that's why they wind up not having to pay a quarterback a second contract or a wide receiver or an edge rusher. So here they are as free agency approaches. They're adjusting their tie, they're smoothing their hair, and they're taking a deep breath, and they're ready to make their best impression on a collection of players that, frankly, aren't that attractive. When you look at it from down here where the Patriots are in the dregs, it's kind of interesting to see how it is kind of easy for bad teams to stay that way, even with a weighted draft, huh? You know, Patriots are in their sixth year of sucking. They missed on their quarterback for a variety of reasons, so they're not paying one. They missed on their wideouts they took in 2019, in 2021, in 2022, so you're not paying them. And they actually even had to spend money last year, Phil, on average players that were already on their team just to field a team. It's a not self-fulfilling prophecy. It feeds on itself.
Yeah, it does. And it's no surprise that it's gotten as ugly as it's gotten when you just consider the number of whiffs in the draft. To me, free agency can give you that immediate bump, and they need that immediate bump right now. There's no question about it. They could, they should be clamoring for the kind of bump they got in 2021, quite frankly. Yeah. The reason that ended up, to me, not working out better is, yes, of course, they whiffed on players, but you almost have to factor that in when you spend that kind of money in free agency. It's that they just continued to draft poorly after spending that amount of money. Like, if they had hit on a couple of drafts, if you had hit on a couple of drafts, you still have a Hunter Henry. You might still have a Matthew Judon because he's not ticked off and, wanting to play for a better team. And, I just think, like, we look at that in retrospect and say that's one of the reasons why they're not still very good, and I just don't believe that. To me, it does come back to the draft. I know we're focused on free agency, but they can do a lot of different things in free agency. If they don't start to draft better, they're going to continue to be in trouble.
I guess the funny thing is, never thought of this. See if you agree with this. Free agency should be the spackle. Free agency should be the stuff that fills those holes that you didn't get. It should not be the foundational layer that you're building your team with. And they tried to, in 2021, build their team through free agency. And as you point out, same with the draft. You're going to miss shit in the draft. You're going to miss. If you find more than half of your selections in an 8-player draft who contribute, that's an absolute bonanza. So you're going to be probably 40% in both draft and free agency. And the Patriots have been 20 and 10% in each. That's why they stink.
It's true. And the unfortunate part about it for the Patriots this offseason in particular is that the free agent class isn't good, even relative to other not so good free agent classes that we've seen over the years, because as the cap increases, and you've gone over this a number of times, as the cap increases, teams are able to keep their best players. And I spoke to one pro scouting director recently who basically said, for a long time I look at the draft and I kind of downplay the draft because it's such a crapshoot. Do you even know what you're getting? These kids are kids. It feels like it's almost luck of the draw sometimes. But this offseason, with the free agents available, even this guy is kind of downplaying free agency. Because in free agency, you should have some control. You have a better idea what these players are. You have control over the kind of money that you can spend on them. It's a more controlled setting than the draft is. And yet, because of the talent available, it feels like it maybe is as much of a crapshoot as the draft, which is not where you want to be if you're the Patriots and you need help right now.
So keeping up with the bleak, Tee Higgins will be franchised by the Bengals. Unlikely that they'll trade him. If they do trade him, I mean, the Patriots could trade for him, I suppose. I poo-pooed that last night on Early Edition. I suppose they could trade for him. around the draft, a franchised wide receiver, but you're going to have to give up. Maybe you only have to give up a 2 for a Tee Higgins. Honestly, if he's franchised and he doesn't want to be there, you could extract him for a 2. I don't want to spend too long on that. That I shouldn't be there. But so Higgins is franchised. Ronnie Stanley, according to Jeremy Fowler of ESPN, will likely re-sign with the Ravens in the very short term, in the near future, $21 to $23 million contract. So you already have to start Alaric, maybe one time. Phil, you must be sitting there saying, I wonder what he's going to call him this time. Is he going to call him Alaric Jones? Is he going to call him Alaric Johnson? Alaric Jackson. Al Jackson has re-signed with the Rams. That's a tackle. So guys are going off the board. Here's Mike Vrabel on that dynamic last week about being ready to pivot.
We want to be aggressive. We want to target players that we feel like are going to help us. They're going to be outstanding players. They're going to be outstanding additions to the locker room and the community. And if that all fits and the compensation fits, but I'm confident that we'll be aggressive. I like to shop like everybody else. And so when you go and there's only one of, a certain car, maybe you have to pay a little bit more for that one car because there's only one of them. We've started some of those discussions internally. And I think having different plans and having an option A and option B, things are going to change. Everybody's looking at the same players. So we have to be ready to pivot and adjust and have a vision for each player, I would say, at each level.
We already knew the Patriots were going to have to be mobile. Mike Vrabel giving voice to it right there. But Phil, let's just go real quick by position. We've done it a million times. Let's do it one more time. If you're the Patriots and you're seeing Tee Higgins go off the board already and you have to make a move at wide receiver, bringing in trade opportunities as well, what would be your first move? What's option A for the Patriots if Phil Perry's the GM next week?
It's sign Chris Godwin, and I think that's something that the Patriots would seriously consider if he's available to them. Understanding that he's dealt with injury, dislocated ankle last year, torn ACL back in 2021. So this guy's missed some time, and the injury, red flags, quote unquote, are real. But I've also spoken to evaluators that say, Higgins included, if you're just gauging ability, Godwin's right there. There's a lot of respect for his game and his ability to play even at this level. Right before he dislocated his ankle, he was actually on pace for a career year. So that's where I would go first, Tom, because to me, he's an imperfect addition because of the injuries. Mm-hmm. But he's a veteran. He's a professional. He's somebody who's had experience in the Tom Brady offense, and so the transition maybe he actually was recruited by, and I'm not sure if they actually crossed over Penn State, but he had a relationship with Bill O'Brien too. I just think he'd be a good fit for this program. I think the program looks at him as a good fit for their receiver room and what they need right now in terms of bringing that veteran presence and that professionalism. And he only costs money, Tom. You're talking trades, mm-hmm. whether it's trading for Higgins on the tag or anybody else, you're talking about maybe giving up a real valuable pick. And I'm really reluctant to do that if I'm New England. So Godwin would be my next option, and I think he will be a very real consideration for the Patriots.
If you were talking to Godwin, you have to, as Vrabel said, have option B and C. Where would Devontae Adams and Cooper Kupp fit in your next level of, hey, I'm spending most of my time here at the bar talking to Godwin, but I'm also sending drinks over here and here to Adams and Kupp. I would think that it's probably smart to keep dialogue going with Adams as well.
I would think so, and to me that really depends on the relationship with Josh McDaniels and McDaniels' willingness to work with him and vice versa. And Adams' wants and needs. Like, yep. Here's a scenario. Would you rather sign Devontae Adams to whatever it requires, meaning maybe a huge number, because he really would rather be on the West Coast, and he doesn't know what the situation is going to look like here in New England? Would you rather sign him to a massive, massive money deal for like 2 years, or would you rather trade a real pick for DK Metcalf, who's younger and is maybe going to be part of the solution for you moving forward, but you also have to pay him Like, what's the better scenario there? I just think they should be looking for somebody who can be here for a while and grow and not just look for the Band-Aid.
I think Adams would be my option, but as I was thinking about this earlier today, we're talking about the Patriots being in a position to acquire some of these guys, and we're going to hear a lot of, hey, the Patriots are in on. Well, why aren't they landing them? Because players don't want to come here. The players are looking right now at the Patriots like Siberia. Whether it's Ayuk, whether it's Calvin Ridley, they're not at a point yet where they're in the running for players. I mean, that's kind of scary. They're just waving money around from the street. They're not even getting to the front porch. Look at us. That's really jarring, I think, when you think about it.
But don't you think it's maybe changed a little bit? Has it not changed, do you think,
I don't know.
From last offseason?
To a degree with Vrabel, McDaniels, and May, and the money aspect, but then you keep getting these little shots in the knee. The NFL players poll, the fact that Kraft ends up 31st among the owner ratings, the fact that when you really look at the team and you go, my God, look at that offensive line. There's one player, Mike Onwenu, who's probably under contract that is going to be there. In August. It's and Andrews to a degree. I did my offensive line, but I just think
he's banged up. He would even acknowledge he's not. There's some uncertainty in terms of what he's going to be able to do.
We're perceiving the Patriots as being able to be in on these players because of the amount of money they have, but I think every single player is going to look at this team, a DK Metcalf, a Devontae Adams, a Cooper Kupp, and they're going to have to swallow hard and say, do I really want to do this just for the money? Because I hate to say it, fans, the tradition is a little bit gone. Maybe Mike Vrabel can reinvigorate and breathe new life into the franchise in terms of the life that it had. And I think he wants to. He is, as opposed to us who've been watching the decline over the last 5 or 6 years, he's still attached, I think, mentally to the Patriots as they were. Why else would he have wanted so much to come here? But those Patriots are gone. Can he blow the dust off of the logo and say, see, same team? Or will he find out that that's gone? That period, all they have in common with it is the logo and the place they play. So, you've gone from being a team that could lowball people and haul them in so that they can get rings to one that people are avoiding like it's radioactive. It's Chernobyl on Route 1, Phil.
I just think you're right. I'm just wondering if that dynamic that you're describing is really going to inhibit their ability to get a true number one. Because I think they could get it too. Like, I think they could improve their receiver room, despite everything you're saying, with a guy like, here's another trade, Jacoby Myers. That was a name that was raised to me. I was actually a little bit surprised. But when, discussing this with executives and just coming out of the week from Indianapolis, you look at the Patriots situation, maybe try to squeeze a little bit more out of Jacoby Myers with Josh McDaniels. And maybe that, because of his experience with McDaniels, that's something that those hurdles that you're talking about would be easily cleared. And then there's another name that was brought up, which is Brandon Ayuk, who really didn't want to come here last year, to the point where, he's not even answering the Patriots' calls, essentially, as they're trying to pursue him and offer him a really good deal, a deal that was better than the one he signed with the Niners, and he still didn't want to come. So can you trade for that guy? Are you going to get a motivated guy if you do trade for him? Has the situation changed enough here where he would be interested in playing for the Patriots? So there's a couple trade names there that were brought to me that kind of made me raise an eyebrow, and they'd be improvements for the Patriots. I just don't know if they're really going to completely morph your room in one season.
Greg Bedard, I think another number of people have talked about Joe Milton as a possible trade target, but Bedard went in depth on Felger and Maz the other day and spoke about it, thought that, maybe you could get a 2 in return for him, or you could at least ask for that. I think that might be a little high for Milton.
Yeah, that's really high. He's high.
But the point,
like that, what, 2?
But
Guy was a seventh round pick
no.
12 months ago. I don't know. I talked to somebody yesterday, Tom, who said, you could probably get something better than the seventh you used to draft him, but much better. Like for this, and never say never. He said it's a quarterback, and he's a guy with upside, and he's talented. There's no doubt. But this AFC exec was talking about a fifth, maybe a fourth.
Yes.
A second is a different world.
Let's tie it back to Jacoby Myers, though.
Okay.
So if there is a market right now for Joe Milton and the Raiders have a need, and Jacoby Myers is entering the last year of his deal, only on the books for $10 million in salary, the Patriots are in a position where they could send perhaps Joe Milton out to the Raiders. Now they have a guy who could potentially be as good as Shedeur Sanders, or, I mean, I don't know. There's a reason he was taken in the seventh round. But I think it's worth looking at. Can you trade for Jacoby Myers? Could you send Joe Milton for Jacoby Myers and just be in that Green Bay Packers mode where you draft a quarterback, you walk him around, you have him waved to all the prospective teams, and then you just trade him. And if you trade him for Jacoby Myers, you bring Jacoby Myers in and you give him an $18 million a year salary. Fine. Zing zang. Now you have your wide receiver. And, $18 million for Jacoby Myers. The guy he averages 85 catches a year. Not for big yardage, but he's going to go 80 catches, 967 yards, and 3 touchdowns, and he's going to be where he's supposed to be all the time. So I love that idea because I'm sorry, I'm not the only one, but it's mine. Somebody else has probably thought of it as well. But Phil, do you like it? Do you love it? Do you need to do it?
I don't hate it at all. And I like the idea of bringing in Myers, and I don't hate the idea of trading Milton for him because I'm not sure Milton's, barring an injury to Drake May, where Joe Milton's given a real opportunity to play for a month and really prove that he's a viable quarterback in this league. Like his value to the rest of the league, I'm not sure is getting much better because if he just sits on the bench for the next couple of years and plays in some preseason games, that to me is not drastically improving things for him. And the closer he gets to free agency, the less contract you're able to deal for if you're an acquiring team, right? So that diminishes his value a little bit. And the closer he just gets to free agency and walking away for nothing, which sort of pushes you, if you do want to get something for him, to get him out of here. And so I don't hate the idea of trading Joe Milton in a vacuum. Like there is certainly a case to be made for it. And if you want to see the case in full detail, go to NBCSportsBoston.com because that's live on the website right now. But the trade for Myers makes sense, Tom. Again, I knew this was an idea that you had, and so I brought this idea to this executive that I spoke to yesterday about Milton's trade value. And he said, yeah, you might have to attach a pick to it. So say it's Joe Milton in a 7th or Joe Milton in a 6th for Jacoby Myers. Would I be willing to do that? Sure. Sure as hell I would be. Yeah. And $18 million it feels like a lot, and I kind of was like, wow, he's on the books for like 10 a year or something right now in Vegas.
Yep.
And he's only gotten older since then. So that feels like a lot, but he is productive and he is reliable and he plays a lot. And so I would be willing to do that. That's why I say
18. Folks, in 2020, Tom Brady was only looking for $25 million a year. That's just 5 years ago. All he wanted was $25 million guaranteed per year. From the Patriots, they didn't give it to him. The Bucks did. He signed there. He won a Super Bowl. Now you have shit bum quarterbacks making $60 million a year. So if you're sitting there saying, well, Jacoby Myers just a couple of years ago, hell, in 2023, he turned his nose up at 11. Now you're going to give him 18? Yes, the cap has gone up that fast.
How about Jerry Jeudy, Christian Kirk, Deontay Johnson? I would put Jacoby Myers in that category, wouldn't you? Those are the guys those are the guys right now that are making about $18 million a year.
I certainly would. Phil, does it look like free agency is going to leave them still drafting for needs in April?
I think they could, Tom, because there's one need in particular that if you don't fill it in free agency, and then you say to yourselves, well, we're not going to force it in the draft because that's not what we're going to do here. That's not the right thing to do. You are quite literally putting your quarterback in harm's way. And that's something you can't live with. And so if they don't get a left tackle, they need to draft a left tackle. And I think it would push them to draft Will Campbell. Like it or not, hate the arm size or not, I think you'd have to do it at 4. And maybe you could trade down and still feel really good about your ability to do it. And maybe, you'd feel good about, even if you miss out on Campbell, you trade back to 10 and you get Armand Membu, who just had a tremendous combine, does have longer arms, is a little less of a sure thing, but might have a higher ceiling than Will Campbell. That's how it's been described to me when I talk to scouts. But Will Campbell's considered really, really good still. And the people that I've spoken to, even since his arms have been measured, Tom, consider him a tackle. And he's everything the Patriots need right now when it comes to, forget about the positional need, football character, love of the game, dependability, work ethic, lead by example type. He might not come in and be, Mr. Vocal leader and rallying the troops in the middle of the locker room as a rookie, but you could see him growing. It wouldn't be too long, I don't think. You could see him growing into it. You really could. Yep. And I know there were people that spent a lot of time around him during the combine who said even during the combine, I know that's a little different setting, but you're thrown into the mix with a bunch of talented guys, a bunch of big egos, a bunch of guys with a lot of money on their minds and making sure that they have a good performance. And it sounds like he exhibited a lot of leadership qualities, even just, walking around with his group of offensive linemen that he was with for a few days. So this is a guy that I could see them drafting because the need is still there, especially somebody like Ronnie Stanley's not available to them in free agency.
And I know already that the sky will be falling here because of Will Campbell's arm length. If the Patriots do indeed in a month and a half draft him, it will be, we're going to hear more about arm length over the next however long than we ever could possibly want to. Dante Scarnecchia, who I think everybody probably has a small oil painting on the wall right next to Surfer Jesus.
Mine's needlepoint.
Needlepoint. Dante Scarnecchia has said that shit's overrated when it comes to arm length. And I do agree that it can be to an extent. You get wound up on it. And when Dante Scarnecchia said that in 2018, that was relative to the conversation around Isaiah Wynn. Was Isaiah Wynn a bad player because he had short arms? Not really. Isaiah Wynn's problems happened 12 inches higher than his arms, right in between his ears. And it's not because he was dumb. He just got in his own head. I mean, you got a guy who couldn't get off the ball on time. But when you remember how he looked as a rookie before he blew his Achilles in that first year as a left tackle during training camp, he was outstanding, which is a shame because things went south. But here's Will Campbell on his own very own arms. I think I've shown everything that I need to show that I can play tackle at an elite level. You can go look at my tape. There's not one play on there that when I get beat, you say that's because he has shorter arms. Obviously, I don't have stereotypical offensive tackle arms. I'm aware of that. People have to nitpick something. I've heard it all my career. When I was coming out of high school, the college coaches all said the same thing. I proved them wrong. It's something I anticipate doing again. Every player has gotten now very good at being at the combine and selling themselves like a politician as to why they should be well respected. But there's a lot to like about Will Campbell. His other athletic measurables, Phil, were outstanding.
Yes.
Towards a broad jump, vertical. Well, who needs a vertical jumping tackle? It's just an indicator that he is an explosive mover. And if his arms aren't that long, at least you know that he is explosive laterally and with his movements that he can get in front of people. And that is when you talk about linebackers, remember, Phil, Bill Belichick used to talk about this in terms of 40 time. A 4-7 linebacker, if he knows where he's going, can be a 4-4 guy. A 4-4 guy, if he doesn't know where he's going, is a 4-9 guy. Phil, talk to me about Will Campbell a little bit more.
Yeah, I would add one more thing about the arm length. One thing I heard from people in Indy and scouts who observed just how these measurements were going is that it sounds like a lot of guys measured shorter than expected and measured shorter than they had measured previously. So Will Campbell has...
Was it cold there? It must have been cold.
What I was told is sometimes that can just come down to who's doing the measurements, right? So like it wouldn't stun me if we get to the LSU Pro Day and they do it again, and people might say, well, that's obviously going to be biased because they're going to be at LSU. but there's going to be a lot of scouts there, and usually, it's not. Usually, it's like an NFL person who's going to be doing the measurements at the pro day.
Plus, it's warmer.
It's warmer, so that might help. And maybe he's doing a lot of yoga between now and then to really open himself up. But it sounds like he has on the books a measurement of 32 7/8 for his arm. And he measured a little bit shorter, but he wasn't the only one. So there was something going on maybe with the, whoever was doing the measurements that day. And would you feel better about it if he was 32 7/8? Can you just round up the extra 1/8 of an inch, whatever that is, something like that, and call it 33? And now we're suddenly feeling good about playing him at tackle because he is 33 and not 32. So, I am. And maybe we'll all be proven wrong. Maybe he'll become an NFL tackle, Tom, and he will just lose because of his length on a consistent basis against defensive ends that have 34 and 35-inch arms. But I'm sorry, it is hard not to hear what Dante Scarnecchia has to say and not to think about it in those terms. We're talking about this much in terms of his arm length, and we're really feeling like that's going to really prohibit him from being a good player on the outside.
I think an eighth of an inch is even less.
Yeah, I mean, even if it's a full inch, you're talking about this much. So it's this is for all the people watching on YouTube. Apologies to the people that are just listening to us when we're looking. The
inches are everywhere.
So I agree with the people who feel like he should still be in consideration at 4. And I just think because of the premium nature of the position, Tom, I would rather take Will Campbell and his short arms than take Mason Graham, who weighed under 300 pounds and has short arms himself, at defensive tackle, which is a position where, unless you're Aaron Donald, which he's not, is a lot more difficult to make sort of like the franchise-altering kind of impact that a true left tackle can make. Mm-hmm. I see a lot of comparisons for Mason Graham to Christian Wilkins, who was, with the Dolphins for a long time, then the Raiders, and is a good player at defensive tackle. But does Christian Wilkins impact winning, like one way or the other, on a consistent basis? Is he changing the game? I have a hard time making that argument for Mason Graham, who's an undersized defensive tackle. I
wonder if it's going to add up to the Patriots have to be on the offensive side of the ball persistently in the draft and the defensive side of the ball in free agency. I think it might end up being something like that. But what we're talking about really is when you play it out, if the Patriots don't do anything on the offensive line in free agency that makes you feel comfortable, say you just get Morgan Moses from the Jets or someone like that, you still probably are going to want to develop a tackle. And Christ, you need a right tackle too while you're at it. And Cole Strange is not anybody's idea of a long-term answer at left guard. And City So got put in mothballs. And Antonio Mafi, they've already moved on to. So this is maddening.
Layden Robinson could be your left guard next year.
Oh, yeah, Layden Robinson. And Caden Wallace. I should not start shoveling dirt on those cats yet. But if you don't get a tackle in free agency and you're sitting there looking at Travis Hunter, because it went Abdul Carter and Shedeur Sanders and somebody else, Cam Ward. Then you're looking at you're looking at Travis Hunter or Will Campbell. You might be consigned to taking Will Campbell because of your need, because you do have to draft for need when your team really sucks. People are like, oh, you got to take the best player available. No, you can't. Only really, really good teams can take the best player available. When you really suck and you're drafting for full need and you don't have answers at those positions, you do have to do that. And what would scare me is Travis Hunter, to me, I keep thinking, Phil, and I'm sorry I'm so repetitive on all our shows and pods, I feel like he's going to end up having the potential to be a Lamar Jackson type of player. People are going to look at him and go, well, what are we supposed to do with him? Is he a wide receiver? Is he a corner? It's too complicated. And that's what teams did with Lamar Jackson. And he ends up being a 2.5-time MVP. Kind of MVP-ish this year, even though I didn't vote for him. But that's how I could see Travis Hunter going, being, oh my God, look at those teams that didn't figure a way to figure out how to use Travis Hunter. He's got 977 yards and 8 touchdowns offensively. He's got 4 picks on defense. It's ridiculous. Phil.
Yeah, I think he's too good to pass up. Even if you still have a need at left tackle, you just swallow hard. You take the better player who's the easier projection. And I know you're saying the projection is a little complicated, but I think, Tom, I think teams are so enamored by his ability at both positions that they wouldn't say it's too complicated. They probably would say, well, we'll figure it out. Like we can't screw this up because he's that good at both spots.
That's cool. That's a good way to put it.
It's a great problem to have if you really need to figure it out. And if I'm the Patriots, I'm encouraging him to play receiver, and then we'll find. You really want to play defensively? Well, guess what? You're at least our second best corner in New England, and so we'll find a way to use you. Don't worry. Dime packages.
It's funny. It's almost like you get a
critical
mulligan.
Situations.
It's almost like you have a mulligan. Say you draft him at 3 and he ends up okay. Well, he can't play wide receiver as we found out, which is unlikely. But you have a mulligan. Well, he doesn't seem to be picking it up over there. He's barely better than Jalen Polk. You know what? Just put him on defense. Boom. You get a mulligan on the player. Yeah. You get 2 shots.
It's true. Yeah. And I think he's going to be good at both. I think he's going to be impactful at both. His ball skills are so ridiculous. You're talking to receivers coaches about this guy, and they salivate at the idea of getting him because not only is he already excellent, elite in terms of his ball skills, the ability to track the football, and the hands are just so sure. And he has this ability to contort his body to make really any kind of catch that you need him to make. So even though he's not the biggest guy in the world, his catch radius is, outsized because of that athleticism and that flexibility. They look at it and they say, he's only getting better at that position. He's already excellent. And he's gotten comparisons to people I've spoken to Devontae Smith because of that ball tracking ability. And he's bigger. He's about 20 pounds heavier than Devontae Smith was when Devontae Smith was coming out of Alabama a few years ago. But think about getting a guy who's already that good. And I'm not going to say he doesn't know how to run routes. I just don't think he was coached in such a way at Colorado where they forced him to do certain things as a route runner. But he comes to Josh McDaniels and he polishes some things on that side of the ball because he's able to spend more time on it. Who knows how good he could be offensively. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I would be looking at is, go there. And then do you have to force a pick in the second round to take the best tackle available and just cross your fingers and hope that guy works if you still don't have one? But this is why in free agency, like Ronnie Stanley, I know it sounds like, according to Fowler and others, like there's still open dialogue between the Ravens until they put pen to paper. Like I'm assuming he's going to get to free agency. And if you're the Patriots and Fowler's talking about a deal that pays him $21 to $23 million per year, that's kind of the going rate for somebody in Ronnie Stanley's situation. The Patriots have the ability, Tom, to really blow that out of the water and say, well, I know Baltimore, who's tighter to the cap. Baltimore might give you 23, Ronnie. We'll give you 28. How does that sound? And over the life of the deal, you're going to make a full $15 million more. And this is probably going to be your last big bite at the apple. How's that sound? Why don't you come up and play for us? Like that's what that's what they should be doing, in my opinion.
Yeah, and think about that. If you're Robert Kraft and we're paying $5 million a year more for that guy who was probably why? And then Mike just looks at Elliott and goes, ask him. And while you're at it, call Bill. Find out why. Why are we doing it? That they're now pinched into a point where they have to do these things. They have to overspend because of the god-awful performance previously at these positions. My last thing, I'm going to wrap it up. We got more shit that we could talk about here, including no more hard knocks for Billy Belichick and the UNC Tar Heels. But wrap it up with this. If Travis Hunter is sitting there at 4, that's enticing for a good team around the league who is not you to say, we'll do anything to get Travis Hunter. Mike, Elliott, Ryan Cowden, we're going to send you next year's one, this year's one. What do you think, man? We really need Travis Hunter. You guys, what are you going to do with him? You need a tackle. Come on, give him to us.
I mean, it's really interesting when you bring that up because you start to look at teams that are like going to try to contend or in the near future really want to contend in terms of spending money. Gosh, I don't know. I mean, have the Bengals traded Tee Higgins by then? And are they willing to trade way up and give you, a whole crap ton of first-round picks? Because they see themselves as being in a window with Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow that they have to really try to maximize. The one problem would be the teams that are really contending, they probably start, I don't know, would you call San Francisco a contender? I think I would. Would they die to have Travis Hunter on a rookie salary while they're about to pay Brock Purdy? So that starts at 11. And then your next contending team is probably the Bengals at 17. And then you've got the Seahawks, Bucks. Then you really are into these like playoff teams the rest of the way, or sniffing the playoffs.
The Niners would be interesting because they're losing Debo, and
they might lose Ayuk.
Lost Debo. And Ayuk, that's the one thing I want to point out about Ayuk, folks. When you're thinking about Ayuk, they cannot trade him until after June 1st, meaning his contract will explode so badly on them if they can't trade him after June 1st and divvy up the money still owed to him. He'd have to be a post-June 1 deal, but after the June 1st, the cap savings become for the Niners. They'd save $6 million this year, then they'd save 11, then they'd save $37 million and $39 million and $14 million against the cap. Okay, because his extension was worth $120 with $45 million guaranteed and a $76 million total guarantee. The bottom line is, I think it's like $18 or $20 million. I'd have to look it over the cap. If they traded him before June 1st, after June 1st, it drops precipitously.
You could make the deal beforehand, though, Tom, and kind of treat it as a post. Well, and it sounds like that's what the Commanders are going to do with the Debo trade. They're planning on making it a post June 1 kind of deal.
Okay.
Even though they've,
That's wild. So does Debo not come in for any passing camp or anything?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like, he could probably work out with Jane Daniels, in the same way that guys, always go to whatever local college and throw the ball around. But yeah, maybe he has to miss part of OTAs and they just give him a weight loss program from afar via email. And they ask him to execute that on his own so that he shows up ready to work, because he's got a bit of a reputation as to his inability to do that kind of thing when it comes to taking care of himself properly going into a given season.
I just want to see what his pre-June 1st. Okay, it's $39 million if they trade him before June 1st. Dead money and cap savings if he's cut prior to June 1st. What if he's traded prior to June 1st? $18 million if he's traded prior to June 1st. And it is $4 million if he's traded. $4 million in dead money if he's traded after June 1st. So there you have that. So that's going to have to be a post-June 1 marking or whatever. But there we are, folks. We're going to continue to get after it. Things are moving already this week as we head toward free agency. Strap yourselves in. We're ready for a wild ride that probably is going to end with us getting hit in the face by a bird on this wild ride. You ever seen those? I think Fabio got hit by a bird when he was on a roller coaster.
I've never seen that. That sounds horrible.
Yeah.
Dirty.
I'll send you the link. Yeah, I'll send you the link. But again, thank me for another ridiculous segue into foolishness at the end. Phil, thanks for being with us. What do you got on the next Pats this week?
We're going to do some combine winners and losers, and we're going to do a great conversation with Lance Zierlein. He's got some interesting names.
Good.
He's great because he is not afraid to veer from where others are in terms of his grading and his analysis of certain prospects. So he was awesome. So we'll have that conversation for everybody posted soon.
Great. We're going to pilfer that on Thursday. Sometimes we do the nice crossover episodes where Phil, we steal a bunch of it. I think we're going to do that for Thursday from the next Pat. So don't listen to the next Pats. We'll hear plenty of it on Patriots. We've done it again. See you, folks.